You can now connect both ChatGPT and Claude directly to your Interactive Brokers account. Once connected, they can read your portfolio, analyze your holdings, and even answer the kind of questions you would normally pay a financial advisor for. But which AI is actually the best one to use? To test that out, I asked both of them 5 questions about my portfolio. Then I kept score to see which one answers the best. And just to make it fair, I ran both AI on their highest settings, ChatGPT on GPT 5.5 high and Claude on Opus 4.8 max effort. Though I actually wanted to use Claude's latest and most powerful model, Faber 5, but the US just banned non-US citizens from using it, which is lucky for ChatGPT, because otherwise, this wouldn't even be a fair fight. So with that being said, let's not waste any time and let's get straight into round 1. Okay, let's start off with the most basic test. Before any AI can give you good advice, it first needs to be able to give you a clear picture of what you actually own. So I asked both of them to give me a complete snapshot of my portfolio, my holdings, my sector breakdown, where my money is invested around the world, and how it is split across stocks, ETFs, and cash. And here's what I got. On the actual numbers, this round was basically a tie. Both of them got my holdings right, my sector breakdown, and where my money is invested around the world. So on pure numbers alone, both of them performed equally well. However, what separated them was how they displayed the information. ChatGPT just gave me the data as one giant wall of text and tables, and I had to scroll through all of it just to find the stuff that was actually important. Meanwhile, Claude did something completely different. Instead of dropping a whole bunch of tables on me, it also built charts that actually helped me understand the data better. On top of that, it didn't just leave me to interpret everything myself. It went ahead and wrote up a short summary and pointed out the parts that actually mattered, like where I was too heavily concentrated. So instead of me having to dig through the data and figure out the takeaways, Claude handed them directly to me. Because of that, round 1 goes to Claude. Sure, both got the facts right, but at the end of the day, I don't just want the numbers, I also want to understand them in a glance, and that's exactly what Claude was able to do. Now, if you want to start investing, you need to keep your costs low. That's why I use Interactive Brokers. With Interactive Brokers, you are paying just 35 cents per trade on the US stock market. That's one of the lowest in the industry. They also give you access to Ireland domiciled ETFs, which can save you a chunk of dividend withholding taxes. And if you are not sure what to invest in, they also have a bunch of free company research tools built right into the platform, so you can do your homework before putting your hard-earned money in. Check out my link in the description to get started. Alright, now back to the video. Next, round 2. On paper, my portfolio looks well diversified. I own a whole bunch of different stocks and ETFs, but looking diversified and actually being diversified are not the same thing. So I asked both AIs to do a full audit of my portfolio, cover the biggest risks and weaknesses, which of my holdings move together, highlight any false diversification, which ones look overvalued, and which companies have the strongest and weakest competitive moats. And for each one, tell me what I should actually do about it. And this is what Claude said. It told me that 2 of my biggest ETFs, QQQ and SGSG, are stuffed with the exact same big tech names that I already own. So once it added up everything I'm really exposed to, both the stocks I hold directly and the ones hiding inside my ETFs, my top 6 positions, Nvidia, Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, and Meta, actually make up about 58% of my entire portfolio, and not the 25% it looks like on the surface. This means I'm nowhere near as diversified as I thought. Instead, I'm really just making one giant bet on big tech. Then it went further. Rather than just listing the valuation numbers in a table, it also plotted all my stocks on a scatter chart and mapped how expensive each one is against how fast it is actually growing. So in a single glance, I could easily see which of my holdings were overpriced and which ones were a bargain. After that, it ranked all my holdings by the competitive mode, or basically how hard it would be for a rival to come in and steal their business, from the strongest right down to the weakest, while flagging the threats that could break each one. And finally, it gave me a clear list of the things that I could do to fix all the issues, from the concentration, valuation, and the modes. Now, to be fair, ChatGPT also did a strong audit too. It caught the same concentration problem, ranked my holdings by both their valuation and their modes, just like Claude did, and it also gave me a clear list of fixes, like cutting my triple Q and mega cap growth exposure by 10 to 15 percentage points, or trimming my Google down to 7%. So on the raw analysis, both of them clearly delivered. However, when it comes to delivery, Claude again wins hands down. While ChatGPT had almost the same findings, they were buried in pages of text that I had to dig through myself. Meanwhile, Claude took the exact same analysis and turned it into something that I could actually see and act on. Because of that, round 2 goes to Claude, and it's now 2-0. Next, round 3, and this is where it gets practical. Because it's not enough to just analyze what you already own, a good AI should also tell you what's actually worth buying. So I asked both AIs which of my current holdings looks like a good buying opportunity right now, both on the technicals and on the valuation, and for each pick, whether it is genuinely a good company to hold for the long term. And right away, both of them agreed on the number 1 pick, Adobe. The stock had been sold down hard and was trading well below what it's actually worth. Both gave solid reasons for why it is a buy along with the risk. But beyond that, their picks differed. ChatGPT told me to also buy Novo Nordisk and Meta, while passing on S&P Global and Mercado Libre, because based on a strict DCF valuation, those two weren't cheap enough for it. Meanwhile, Claude did almost the opposite. It called S&P Global and Mercado Libre buys and told me to stay away from Novo Nordisk, flagging it as likely a value trap. So who was actually better? For me, there were 2 things that Claude did better. First, the depth. Claude didn't just pull one valuation figure off the website. It also computed the technicals from 6 months of my own account data, then mapped every stock on the exact 2 holdings I asked about, how oversold each one was against how far below fair value it traded. So in a single chart, I could see which names were both cheap and beaten down. On the other hand, ChatGPT's answer was cleaner and more decisive, but a lot of it was lookup, while leaning on a single valuation number per stock. Second, and more importantly, the costs themselves. While ChatGPT recommended Novo Nordisk on the basis of technicals, valuation and quality, Claude was a little more skeptical. Rather than seeing it as a stock that looked cheap, it warned that it was cheap because it was losing ground to its competitor, and told me not to touch it. Because of that, Claude takes round 3 too, and this is starting to look very one-sided. Next, round 4. So up until now, both AIs have only worked with the stocks that I already own. But this time, I told them to throw all of that out and build me the perfect 5-stock portfolio from scratch. One that they would want to hold for the next 10 years. Which stocks would make the cut and how much would they put into each one. ChatGPT built me a portfolio of Google, Amazon, Microsoft, ASML, and Visa, while Claude went with Microsoft, Alphabet, Berkshire Hathaway, Eli Lilly, and TSMC. So who actually built the better portfolio? Rather than deciding for myself, I went and passed their portfolios to each other to analyze. And here's the results. Claude was the more gracious of the two. It admitted that the portfolios were actually more alike than different, and that ChatGPT's pick were genuinely strong. But it made a good point. Since I'm already so heavily concentrated in big tech, which we saw earlier, ChatGPT's lineup is just more or less the same, where 4 of his 5 picks were tech. Meanwhile, Claude deliberately spread things out, adding a healthcare giant in Eli Lilly for diversification and Berkshire Hathaway as a kind of safety net. And for someone in my current situation, Claude argued that its portfolio was the better fit. On the other hand, ChatGPT stood its ground. It scored its own portfolio slightly higher than Claude's. And while it gave Claude some credit for the safety net that Berkshire Hathaway adds, it argued that its own picks had the higher long-term upside, and it wasn't backing down. So who takes the round? There's no real way to know which portfolio will actually outperform over the next 10 years. So instead, I judged them on the one thing I actually could, which was how well each portfolio was built. For me, that was Claude. ChatGPT's picks were genuinely good. However, 4 of them were tech, which basically doubled down on the over-concentration issue that both the AIs flagged as a problem earlier. Meanwhile, Claude's portfolio was more diversified. It spread the holdings across tech, healthcare, and a holding company. This is probably the kind of mix that's actually built to survive a full decade. Now, to be fair, Claude wasn't flawless either. In its analysis, it made a couple of factual errors. First, It claimed that Google was the first company in history to cross $400 billion in revenue, which wasn't true because companies like Walmart and Amazon had already gone past that mark years before that. Then it also wrongly claimed that I didn't own Amazon or ASML, when I actually own both. However, none of that changed the one thing this round was actually about, which is the portfolio itself. Because of that, round 4 goes to Claude as well. So here we are. Claude has already swept all 4 rounds, which means the match is technically already decided. But there was still one final round to go. So I asked both AIs to go through my portfolio and tell me if anything happened in the last month, any news or earnings that changes whether I should keep holding a stock, then what to actually add on versus what's just news. And here's what I got. Claude caught something that ChatGPT completely missed. One of my holdings, S&P Global, was down by about $3,900, and ChatGPT looked at that and basically be like, meh, calling it an ordinary underperformance with nothing new going on. Meanwhile, Claude saw what was actually going on behind it. The company is in the middle of splitting off a part of its business into a separate listed company. And because I've held the stock past a specific cut-off date, I'm set to automatically receive shares in the new company once it starts trading. So this wasn't just a stock that's underperforming, it's also due to a corporate event, and only Claude knew that it was happening. Also, remember no one noticed from round 3, which ChatGPT told me to buy? This time, it flipped its narrative and told me to trim it instead, as its competitive position is weakening. Meanwhile, Claude stayed consistent and told me to stay away from the stock. Overall, Claude was just the more useful AI. It dug deeper, it tied everything back to my actual holdings instead of the market in general, and it caught the real specific things happening to my money that ChatGPT completely missed. So the final round goes to Claude as well, which makes the final score 5-0. Now, I want to be clear, just because ChatGPT lost every round to Claude doesn't make it useless. Honestly, this result was kind of expected. That's because based on the latest index, Claude Opus 4.8 is simply the better performing AI. So Claude winning here wasn't a fluke. But that doesn't mean ChatGPT is bad. In fact, it was the faster and more decisive of the two. So if you just want a quick, clear answer that tells you what to do, you can just use ChatGPT. But when you want to go deeper and not miss anything, Claude is the better AI right now because it does the actual math, builds the dashboards, and even caught the event that ChatGPT missed. However, the most important takeaway is this. Despite how good they were, both of them still made mistakes. So don't blindly follow either one. The best setup is to just use them to flat things out for you, then go and verify before you act. Because at the end of the day, while these are powerful tools, they can't replace your own thinking. So that's all for this video, but what else do you want me to try out next? Do comment down below and let me know. Also, like, share and subscribe as I'll be posting new videos every week.